Hello Bits and Bones, and welcome to Slady's Quick Reviews, where I share a concise rundown on my thoughts of content that I don't have a whole lot to say about. This is a review for Little Birds by Hannah Lee Kidder, which I read and reviewed in 2020. My original review reads as follows. Disclaimer, I love Hannah on YouTube, but I couldn't get into this collection. It didn't meet my expectations in a couple ways. One was length. I got through it in one sitting. I'm not saying short story collections need to be long, but I am used to having to put the book down after certain short stories. If a story impacts me, I set it down and come back later, but I didn't have that compulsion with Little Birds. I got the book on sale, and I think that I'd be disappointed had I gotten it otherwise. Hannah has some great imagery. I could always get a sense for the characters no matter how short the space. That said, the short stories were missing something that I apparently need. Now, every story doesn't need a message behind it. Some stories are just about a character view, and that can be great. But there was so much less of a specific point that I couldn't get invested, not to mention that it was over way too fast. Wolverine Frogs was by far the best story in the collection, as it touched on the trauma and response of an assault victim. The other ones, I could define the character but not the point. And I don't think that it helped that there was no theme for me to cling to between the stories, like an overarching theme of the anthology. I think Hannah is great, and perhaps my expectations were too high. I am genuinely excited to read her new collection of short stories coming out, Starlight, because it sounds like it'll fit my tastes a bit better. Sorry, this one is just not my jam, Senpai Hannah. And now a word from Presence Lady. Since reading Little Birds, I have consumed a lot more short story and flash fiction collections, and I do think that my expectations were a little too high, at least comparatively. I have a preference for themed collections, but at this point my standards for how random they can be has definitely slackened. Little Birds, at the least, had a consistent voice in Hannah. I'm going to bump Little Bird's score up from a 2 to a 2.5 on Goodreads, which will round it to 3, because it's held up in my recollection of it well since I read it, and my perception of how much content a certain cost deserves is now entirely non-existent. I've already made a review for Starlight, which I absolutely loved. It was a 5 out of 5, and I would totally recommend go picking that up by Hannah Lee Kidder. But again, they were just different works conceptually and thematically from the start, so there was no way for me to not like the next one, really. And if you like what I like, go pick up Starlight, and Little Birds is definitely a fine read too. As always, thank you so much for watching. Special thanks to my patrons. If you'd like to support me and my content, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!